As you all know, we here at the Empowerment Zone are all about building wealth and the financial empowerment of our communities. And I am thrilled that we're going to be talking about financial empowerment today. Specifically, our topic is From Black Wall Street to Black Main Street, the power to get wealth. And our guest today is Miss Glenice Harris.
Welcome to the Empowerment Zone with Ramona Houston, where we zone in on Black and Brown relations and our journey to empowering our communities.
Glenice Harris is a certified financial educator, and she helps individuals, families, and business owners to reach their financial goals by providing all types of services, including financial education, planning and support. And education is through workshops, seminars, and one-on-one sessions. And planning comes after complimentary financial checkups. So it is Glenice provides these services in order to support you in implementing your financial plan in all stages of your life. And these include 401k rollovers, college planning, debt management, life insurance, long-term care, tax saving programs, retirement and investment solutions, and legacy planning. Glenice is all about being wealth, and passing it forward. Welcome, Glenice. I'm so happy to have you on the Empowerment Zone today.
Thank you, Ramona. I really appreciate the invitation today.
So before we get started, like always, we like to hear about our guests, some background so our audience can get to know you. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, just a little bit. I'm actually a native of New York State. I'm from Buffalo, New York. And over the years, I've lived in a lot of different places, going to college in Omaha, Nebraska. And, I did finish up at UB. But where I am right now is a whole different kind of phase of my life. My full career was actually with AT&T, and I took early retirement in 2002. It was one of those opportunities where your age and your service had to reach a certain number, and I just made it. And I wanted to know what life was like after AT&T. So I did a few things. I did a real estate investment. I got my real estate license. I worked with investors to sell their property. And then later I got involved in the financial industry, and it was in a way where I was actually a client first. But what I loved about the company I'm with now is that the focus was on financial education, and had never had any type of financial representative just try to educate me about finances before. Like even when I left AT&T, I talked to about 3 different advisors to see where I was going to move my 401k. None of them tried to teach me anything. They just want to know how much money I have. And if I don't say the right amount, they won't even see me. I can't even get an appointment. So that's kind of what caught my interest, because I had some funds from a real estate transaction I had done, and I wanted to put the money somewhere. And at that time, I didn't know what I know now. I just had the funds sitting in a savings account and getting hardly any interest. And then Uncle Sam was taking most of that away. And so I ran into a young lady that I had met through a friend of mine who's a eye doctor. And she remembered me from when we first met. And I told her where I was with the transaction I had just made. And she said, well, Glenice, maybe I can just, help you find a better place for your money. And she did that. And after that, I kept giving her referrals, and she was like, had you thought about us working together? And that's when I got involved in the financial industry. And I'm so glad I'm here today, because there's so many people that don't know what they don't know, especially in our community. And this financial education is much needed. I think many people found that over the pandemic that they weren't where they thought they should have been. They didn't have emergency fund. Once the money stopped coming in, a lot of people are still going through a lot of issues right now. And I'm just here to help. And the main way I help is through financial education. Right now, I'm on a financial literacy campaign. I don't know if you see my thing. I guess I can't see it. But anyway, I have on my little button, National Financial Literacy, because the first thing is to get educated. And then once you have the education, you can make wise decisions about your future. So that's why the focus on education. Of course, after the education, if someone wants to have an overview or start putting things in place, I can help with that. But the main thing is the financial education. And I'll just say this. When I retired from AT&T, I retired the old-fashioned way. When I started with them is when we had one telephone company in the United States of America. I know some of our young people can't even imagine that. We had one black phone in our house growing up that weighed about 50 pounds. But anyway, at that time when I got the job, my parents were like, well, you're set for life. You're going to have a retirement plan, blah, blah. And that was kind of true. But things have changed. And as things change, we have to change with it. A lot of people don't have 401ks anymore. If they do, they don't match. Pension has gone away. Social Security is in trouble. So we have to have self-security right now, not Social Security. You can't depend on the government or the employer anymore. I think people found that out. And so I just want to, really reach more people faster to help them start putting things in place and to kind of be prepared for all the stages of life, because life does happen. And when it does, it doesn't mean that things aren't going to happen to you, but what it means is that when the dust settles and you've done some preparation, that your financial house is still standing. And right now, there's a lot of people's financial house that has tumbled, and I don't know if it's going to come back.
Yeah, well, we're going to stay hopeful that it can come back. But to your point, financial education is so lacking in our society, and particularly in our communities, specifically the African American and Latino communities. And I personally would say that's by design. In order to keep us ignorant, we become more consumers than people who are building wealth. And so I'm sure you're so happy and fulfilled by doing the type of work that really, really has an impact on individuals' lives, on families, and within the community. So I'm so happy that you found this particular profession that really, really brings so much purpose in people's lives, because financial education is so important. I know I went through 12 years of college and have a PhD, and I didn't know the basics of financial literacy beyond what my parents taught me, which was to live within your budget, which was good. They taught us to live within our budget, and they taught us to save. But beyond that, it was not a lot of other information that was provided. And when I got ready to buy my first home, I was quite angry that I didn't know the basics of home ownership, and how to purchase a home and all that. But thankfully, I had people along the way who guided me and provided me with that financial education. And I must give a shout out to Wachovia Bank, which is now Wells Fargo Bank, and the women of the NAACP in Atlanta, who had a one-day financial planning, financial education seminar held at the Ritz in Atlanta downtown. That totally changed my life. It totally changed my life. And so I do want to acknowledge it, give acknowledgement to those people who plan these programs, these corporations who create these partnerships with these local organizations and really have an impact on people's lives. A lot of times we complain when things don't go well, but then we fail to express our gratitude when things do go well. So I just wanted to give a shout out to them. But thank you for your work that you do. I'm excited about your the subject of your discussion today, Black Wall Street, from Black Wall Street to Black Main Street.
Yeah.
the power to get wealth. So moving on that topic, we're now commemorating
Yeah.
the whole issue of Black Wall Street and the destruction that happened to the community to the specifically the Black community of
Right.
Tulsa, Oklahoma. I think this year was the 100th,
Yes.
correct?
100th
The
anniversary.
100th anniversary of this particular event, which devastated the community. And I see you chose to put this in your topic. So I really would like you to expand on that concept and why you chose to acknowledge Black Wall Street.
Thank you so much. Yes, I wanted to acknowledge that because, of course, last month was a 100-year anniversary on May 30th. And I feel like, you know, it, the whole concept, once you kind of know what happened at that time, you realize that we have a lot of resilience as a people. Can you imagine the people who were living in the Greenwood district at that time? They were business owners, they owned their home, they owned land, they all supported each other, they bought services and products from each other, they had hospitals, they had hotels, and had Black Wall Street continued, could you think of the generational wealth that the people in that area would have today? And also, I just want to let people know that it wasn't just that one area that had grown like that. There was also, some of you may have heard of Rosewood. There was places across the United States where Black communities rose up because they were segregated. They could not use the services and products from white providers. And so in a way that strengthened them because they had to depend on each other, right? But when I think about it now, I think, you know what? Black Wall Street does not have to be a particular location or city or a building or community. Black Wall Street can be virtual. And I say that, and that's why I chose a topic from Black Wall Street to Black Main Street, because if people in our community, an African American community, get the knowledge and get the discipline and consistency to put things in place for their financial future, but not just for them, for the next generations, we'll all have a Black Wall Street. It's about a mentality. It's inside of us. It's how we look at money. It's our relationship with money. And if we can change our mentality around that and go from on the outside looking good to being good, that will make a big difference in our community. And so that's why I chose that topic today. And I like to help people get to the place where they can change their relationship with money and their mindset around money and move to the next level. And I will tell you this, when I first relocated to Atlanta with AT&T, I was elated. I always wanted to live in Atlanta. I had business trips here. I loved it. I saw Black people being prosperous, had the homes, the cars, the jobs, the businesses. However, what I realized later, back in 2008, when the economy changed and things kind of went south, that, yeah, we did have that. We had made money, we had progress, but we hadn't progressed to the place where we had money to pass on to the next generation. We had new money, we didn't have old money. And so a lot of the people who were looking good, and the reason why I wanted to come here, it was because they were living above their means. They made good money. They made good money in their business or in their job, but they still had more money going out than coming in. They had big homes. Did they own that house? No, they owned a mortgage. They had wonderful, nice cars. Did they own a car? No, they owned a car note. Did they own those clothes? No, they had a credit card where they charged it. So when things kind of ended up, like in the old days, we used to say, you can steal from Peter to pay Paul, right? I don't know if you heard that, but anyway, when the money's coming in, you can kind of finagle, but when something stops and you don't have a solid financial foundation, your whole financial house can fall apart. And that's what happened back then. A lot of people lost their homes, they lost their jobs, they lost everything. So what I'm trying to do now is help people change their mindset so that we can have a Black Main Street. It's not a place, it's a mindset where we learn how money works, how to make our money work for us instead of us working for it all the time. knowing that even if we have a job, you need to know how to do something else on the side. I think a lot of people learned that last year during the pandemic, because you cannot depend on the government. We see what's happening now, right? They're about taking our voting rights away. You can't depend on the government. You can't depend on your employer. Who can you depend on? Yourself. You have to find self-security. And that comes with getting the knowledge and then assessing where you are at a certain point in time to take a snapshot of your finances, know where you are, know where you want to go, and then build a roadmap to get there. And it's not overnight. It takes time. I know a lot of people want to, when I tell people the industry I'm in, a lot of them want to know, oh, where can I put my money? I want 50% return, whatever like that. And those things can happen. You can have that. But what I will say when I sit with them and I do some data collection, I find out they have no insurance in place, no life insurance, no long-term care, no health care. They have a lot of debt. They have no emergency fund. So should we really even be talking about investing at this point? The answer is no. You got to have a solid foundation. And what if you take all your money, you invest it in something like gold or cryptos, currency, whatever, and it just disappears and you don't have anything else? Your financial house will fall apart. So what I try to educate people about is, first, it's your mindset, then get the education. You need to know how money works, how to make your money work for you. You need to know about the rule of 72, compound interest, which can work for you or against you. If you're putting your money somewhere where you're gaining interest, it's working for you. But if you have a credit card and you brought a new living room set and new furniture, or bought some clothes, you put a credit card and you're paying the minimum every month, that same rule, which can work for you, is working against you. So you need to understand that concept about how money works. You need to understand about places you put your money and the tax consequences of where you have your money. Is it in a tax now category, tax later, tax advantage category? That'll be even more important as you plan for retirement. What I find is a lot of people who are ready to retire, if they work for an employer, they have a lot of funds in their 401k plan or 457 plan or 403b, whatever it is. They forget that that money was put into that account prior to paying taxes. It's growing without paying taxes on the interest, right? So guess what? We all have a common relative. And I think you know the person's name, Ramona, Uncle Sam, right? Mm-hmm. He wants your money and he's going to get it now or later, but he's going to get it. So what I find when they retire, all their money is in that pool of funds. And when they take it out, they're taxed at whatever rate because they may be like myself. I'm retired. I still make income. So if I take money that came from my 401k, that's going to be added to my income for this year. And whatever tax category I'm in, that's going to add to it. People forget that. And so I educate people about tax now might be where you have your savings account, your money market or CD, or funds where you can get to it pretty easily. Because if you have an emergency, you want to be able to get to that money and take care of that emergency. I have a concept I call be your own bank. Start having some funds you set aside for 3 to 6 months. And now you might need 12 or 24 months of funds set aside to manage your household in case something happens to your income or just an emergency comes up. Your car breaks down, you need a new transmission, something like that. If you be your own bank, you won't owe anyone anything. Emergency comes up, you take it out of your emergency fund, you take care of that issue, and then you put it back. You don't owe anybody a dime, no interest, no anything. So you want to make sure that you have your emergency fund in place. You want to make sure that you don't have debt that you cannot manage. If you're in debt, get out of it. If you're not in debt, try not to get in it. And like they say, there is some good debt. You got to have, for most things that we do now, we do have to have good credit history. So have it, but manage it, right? We have to learn how to go back to what you were saying, Ramona, about what our parents taught us. Save your money. Save now and buy the thing later. Don't buy it now and you're paying for it forever on your credit card. It doesn't make any sense, right? And the other thing I want people to think about is that when we talk about finances, some of it's not always a very happy conversation. We're talking about life, real life, and life happens. We might get sick, we might die, or we might be caught in between where we're not fully alive. We can't take care of ourselves, but we're still breathing. So if you get sick, you want to have certain things in place. You want to have your health insurance in place, or your disability or critical, chronic, or terminal illness in place, whatever, right? If you pass away, you want to make sure that you have your life insurance in place, that your family's going to be okay, even if you're not here. And believe me, I met people that said they don't want to leave anything for anybody. They want to use all their money, right? So that's, at least don't leave them in the lurch where they got to pay their final expense, get final expense insurance or something like that, right? And a lot of things I talk about, if people don't care for anyone or they don't love anyone, it may not make a difference. But if you care for your family, you love somebody, make sure they're going to be okay, whether you're sick or whether you're not here anymore. And last year in the United States, we had over 500,000 people pass away. Mm-hmm. And, in my industry, I'm thinking, I wonder how many of those people had something in place that their family's going to be okay now that they're gone. I think a lot of them probably didn't. And a lot probably did. But unfortunately, there's some families struggling out there now because they had a loved one that's not here anymore. They cannot bring income into the family. But how many of you know that that family still has expenses? They got to eat. They have to have a roof over their head. They have to have transportation. The other thing I want people to really start focusing on is planning for retirement early. Like I said, I retired old fat. I didn't really even plan retirement. It's just because there's certain things that were in place years ago. I have, retirement things in place. But now people have to start early and think about it. A lot of people don't think about retirement till they're in their 40s or 50s. But most of us started working in our 20s, right? So if we don't start planning at 40 and 50, we've lost about 20, 30 years of setting something aside for our retirement. And people are living longer. I think if you watch the news, you see that there's more centennials today. Mm-hmm. So one thing is you don't want to outlive your money. When you retire, you might still live another 20, 30 years. Are you prepared for that? What kind of life do you want to live? Do you want your children taking care of you or the government taking care of you? You have to start early and start planning so you're going to be okay later. I'm meeting people now who are in their 60s, like 62, they want to retire. I'll sit with them. They don't really have anything in place to retire. Sometimes they may have Social Security, but when they look at their monthly expenses, the Social Security will not cover it. So it means they're going to have to keep working, maybe part-time or do something, right? So I do like to catch people early. However, if you get caught late in this scenario, it's never too late. Mm-hmm. As long as you're breathing, you're open-minded, you're willing to take in new information and make some changes and be disciplined and consistent, you can improve your situation. And that's what I want people to know. It's never too late, but you do have to get educated. You have to know your situation. It's different for everybody, right? Because even when people ask me about where should they put their money, I really can't tell you that until I know more about you. It's just like when you go to the doctor, how would you feel if you went to your doctor and they said, you hadn't even sat down on a seat yet. They said, here's a prescription. Like,
exactly.
Well,
exactly.
With me? How do you give me a prescription, right? And there are some philosophies out there like buy term, invested difference, and that can work for some people, but it might not be for everybody. So we take a more personal approach, one-on-one. It's not a cookie cutter approach, but there are some basic concepts that people need to know about. They need to make sure that they understand something called the X curve. It's the law of building your wealth it's a line going up while your responsibilities are going down, reducing your responsibilities, right, over time. So when you do get to where you're retired, you have less responsibility, but you've put your money aside in different vehicles where now your money that you're getting is coming from places that replace your income from your job or from your business. You don't have to work anymore. You got passive income, right? So you want to understand that concept. You want to understand the building blocks of building a strong financial foundation. The first building block is your protection. That's where all your insurances come in, health, life, long-term care, all that. Because if something happens, you still have money coming in for you and your family. Then you want to take care of your debt. Then you want to take care of your emergency fund. Then you want to look at investment. And sometimes you can do these things simultaneously, but you need to do it. And you need to make sure you're not just focused on investment, but you don't have everything else in place, right? And the other thing I want people to understand, which is very important when it comes to retirement, is the wealth formula. I think everybody knows if you want to build wealth over time, you have to put money somewhere plus time, plus or minus rate of return, depending on where you put your money, minus inflation, minus taxes equals your wealth. So when I meet some people and I talk to them about retirement, they say, oh, well, I'm set. They got their 401k. But in that equation of the wealth formula, when you take away the taxes, which is a negative in that formula, and all you have is your money in a 401k plan, you may not have as much money for retirement as you think, just like I explained before. And I'm going to use real small numbers so I can calculate. But anyway, say you have $100,000 in your 401k, and you have to remember, you don't really have $100,000 in there. Say if you're someone like me, you're still doing something after you retire, you might be in a 30% tax bracket. So what you really have is $70,000 in there because the government's going to get their money. And if you don't start taking it by the time you're either 70 and a half or 72 and a half, they were going to force you to take it in something called required minimum distribution. And if you don't do it, then they penalize you 50% of what you should have taken. And a few years ago, I had a client, I had done a 401k roll for her, and she turned 70 and a half and started getting the notices about taking this distribution. For that particular year, she was supposed to take out a little over $2,000. And if she did not take it out, what that meant was the government was going to take $1,000. They take 50% of what you're going to get, right? And I find out, Ramona, that a lot of people don't know that. So that means that the government's going to get a lot of money they really shouldn't get. So another thing I focus on is having people have a tax saving strategy where you can save on taxes legally, right? I don't want anybody in trouble, but legally, places you can put your money where you can save on taxes when you take the money out later. That would be like a Roth IRA or a life insurance, cash value life insurance product. The money in those kind of products grows without you paying taxes on it. And if you follow the proper guidelines, you can take it out without paying tax. So there's a strategy now called tax-free retirement using that type of vehicle. So those are the kind of things we want to teach people about. Also, there's another strategy that's called an index strategy, where you can put your money somewhere where you have a cap and a floor. So you don't participate in the downside of the market, but when the market goes up, you participate in it up to a cap. Some people don't know about that, and that's something good to know. But the other thing I will say is that there's no one perfect financial vehicle. What you want is to have the diversity, right? You want some of your money in a tax now category. That's where your emergency fund is going to be. You want some of your money in a tax later category. That's where your 401k is, right? It's okay. And if your company is matching you, put in up to the max, because that's free money. Take it. I meet people that don't take advantage of that, right? And then you want something in that last category, which some people call tax advantage or tax never, but really the money you put in there, you've already paid tax on it. So it's growing without you paying taxes. You take it out without paying taxes. And it's good to have something there, especially as you're planning for retirement, because I'm finding too many people when they retire, all their funds are in taxable accounts. So they're like, I didn't realize I'm going to pay so much tax when I retire. It's like, yep, because you didn't know. It's not your fault. But now I'm trying to help people to know so they can go ahead and put their money in the right places, right? So people need to know about certain concepts, increasing their cash flow, making more money. Most people need to make more money, that I've found. But increasing your cash flow is different than ownership, which brings wealth. Ownership brings wealth. That's why we had the Black Wall Street, because they owned what they had. It wasn't credit. They owned their house. They owned their car. They owned their business. They owned land. A lot of them got rich because there was like that oil thing back there in Texas at that time. They owned land. So if you want to have wealth, you have to have ownership. We think it's like making more money. Making more money is good, but then you have to know where to put your money so you have ownership, so you have assets. A lot of us buy our house. We say that's our asset. But if you have a $300,000 mortgage, that's a liability. That's not an asset. You need to have assets. So that's what we need to work on as a people. We need to own stuff. That's how people can take stuff away from us, because we don't own anything. So if you want to go from, having a lot of money, having positive cash flow, to being wealthy, it's all about ownership.
You're making so many good points, just the importance of, changing our mentality, our mindset around money, that
Right.
we really have to be intentional
Right.
about our financial prosperity and building wealth. And as you stated, it's all about education, discipline, and consistency.
That's
You
it.
know, you wrapped it up really, really good, and talking about all the various components of it. You know, getting out of debt, saving, making sure that you live within your means, having an investment strategy, not just investing, but having a strategy,
Yeah.
and you know, just making sure that you're not borrowing so much. Be your own bank,
Yeah.
as you put it.
That's
You
what I'm
know,
talking about.
borrow from yourself. Don't borrow from others, because you're going to end up paying all this interest.
Mhm.
And we really, really need to learn how to make money, but also make our money work for us.
Exactly.
You know, you just have such a wealth of information to share, and we really, really appreciate all the, you know, the little nuggets you gave us. You know, there's a whole bunch of uh information that you provided, but it's up to us to go back and dissect, excuse me, um dissect all of that
Yeah.
information and take it in so that we can actually apply the knowledge that we received.
Yeah.
So, what you have given us a lot of things to do, a lot of homework in terms of building wealth. Do you
Yeah.
have any final words that you would say to our audience in terms of really developing their financial resources and building financial wealth individually and family? And I must also say that you talked about intergenerational wealth. It cannot stop with us, that we have to be able to pass on to help build. That's how people become wealthy. They're not becoming wealthy in many
Right.
people are not becoming wealthy in one generation.
Right.
It's a generational process, and they're making sure that the next generation is set up. They're not spending all their money, and I can name some names, but I'm not,
Yeah. Yeah.
that were had financial prosperity and ended up not even passing a dime down to the
Right.
next generation. So, any final thoughts that you would
Uh,
like to give our audience?
yes, just a couple of things. First, get educated. Find out about how money works, how to make it work for you. Then look at your current situation. Are you happy with it? If you're not, then make some changes. And like I said, it's all about your mentality, right? We don't need to buy everything today and pay for it tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow after that. Also, when you think of finances, you have to have a vision for the future. I think, like the Bible says, people perish because they don't have the vision, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
We need to have a vision, not just how I'm going to pay my mortgage next month, but where do you want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What legacy do you want to leave your children? And when we talk about the legacy of wealth, it's not just in material wealth; it's in mental wealth, right? And what's between your head. And by what I mean by that is, as you get financially educated, teach your children about it. Because what if you leave them something and they don't know how to manage it? Then what good is that, right? We don't want every generation to start from scratch. We want to pass on property. We want to pass on accounts. We want to pass on knowledge. If we can do that, we can impact not just our children and our children's children, but our children's children to the next generations. But we have to pass on that knowledge and pass on the wealth. Those two have to go together.
Well, thank you so much for that wealth of information. If anybody would like to get in contact with you, how would they do so?
Well, they can always give me a call. My number is 678-622-1802. That's 678-622-1802. They can send me an email. My email is Glenice. It's my first and last name, Glenice Harris at Gmail. I'm sorry. It's Glenice.Harris at tfaconnect.com. That's Glenice.Harris at tfaconnect.com. And that is a secure email, so you didn't have to worry about that. And also, I do different seminars. I have one coming tomorrow for business owners. Those are Zoom seminars. So if you just want information on that, you can contact me for that, and I can email you or text you the information.
We always like to end our interviews with helping students to succeed in college. And so in this portion of our show, could you provide us a strategy for college success? But before you do so, can you tell our audience what college or colleges did you attend? What were your major or majors?
Yes.
And what strategy would you give to ensure that students are successful in college?
Okay, well, I graduated from the University of Nebraska at Omaha, and that was a very interesting experience because that was back in the day. But that's where I did graduate from. And when I think about students today going to college, especially from, since I'm in the financial industry, I'm thinking it from the financial perspective. And what I find is most students are not prepared financially for college. I mean, a lot of people, they have a lot of student loan debt now. They're not getting the job that they want. They're not making the income. They keep deferring it. And those deferrals affect their ability to buy a home. There was a time when they didn't really look at student debt too much, but they do look at it right now. So here's what I would say to the students and the parents out there. Start early planning for college. You have to start planning for college. If you are a parent out there and you're listening to me now, if your child is 1 day old, you need to start planning for college. You need to start putting something in place for them. And you need to understand the places to put something in place if you want them to get some type of assistance with tuition. One thing is you can always do a 529 plan, and that's good. However, when you go to get assistance for tuition or for scholarship, they may consider what's in that 529 plan, and they'll deduct that from what the cost of the college is. So you may not get as much as if you didn't have it, but it's good to have, nothing wrong with that. But another thing you might want to consider is putting some of your funds in something called an index universal life product. When you do that, the cash that's growing in there is growing without you paying tax. It can be used later for anything, including college. And when you fill out your forms for FAFSA or whatever, you don't have to include that on there. Where if you have a 529 plan, you do have to include it, and they'll deduct what you have in there from the cost of college. So those are some tips I would give some people as they're planning for college. And I say that because I meet people now who their child is a senior or a sophomore in college, and they're asking me what they can do. It's kind of too late. I'm sorry, I'm not a magician, So you have to start planning. And that's what I mean, Ramona, about vision. You have to have a vision for your future, and not just for you, but for your children. So the biggest problem I see with people going to college right now is the cost, and they're not planning appropriately for cost. They're coming out with $200,000 in debt before they even get a job. And it's like a noose around their neck, they can't even move forward. So that's one thing. Also, I would say, even if you go to college, to me, college is like a stepping stone to adulthood. You're coming out of your parents' home, maybe for the first time, that sort of stuff. And a lot of people that when they come out, they don't actually get into the field that they went into. My degree, my major degree was in communications. I wanted to be a journalist at the time, right? I had a minor in computer science. So the way I started my career with AT&T was as a computer programmer. I didn't really have a vision for that, but that's where I wound up, right? So I would say, in addition to going to college, always also have another skill, a skill that you develop, whether it's matting and framing art, maybe it's home maintenance and repair. Have some other skill, because even if you get out of college and you have a good job, I mean, we just saw that. You don't know what's going to happen. You have to have some type of skill that you can offer that people will want to buy your service or your product. So don't think that college is the end all be all. It's a great stepping stone to your life. It can help you get into an awesome career. My career with AT&T was because I did have my degree in computer science. I wound up, starting with them as a computer programmer and things like that. And I ended up as a district manager. So it got me into the door. So that's great. But I would say, in addition to going to college, have something else you can do, have an entrepreneurial mindset. That also will save you on taxes later. If you have your own business, you can write off certain things, so you have to have you have to have some vision. You can't just be stuck on one thing. And these days you need to be skilled in a lot of different things in order to make it and have good cash flow and to build wealth over time. So the first thing I would say is start planning for your college education early as far as the financial part of it. And also have something on the side that you can do in case when you get out, you're not getting something in your field right away. And that may not be the typical advice, but that's mine.
That is some great advice. Start planning early for college, planning financially. And she gave us 2 ideas about some tools we can use, the 529 plan, as well as the Index Universal Life. And both of them have their pluses and minuses. So make sure you do your research on that. And then lastly, which I've always told my students, get you a hustle. She was saying, get you a skill set that you can make money off of. Modern terms would get you a hustle that you can make some money, so that you can always have not just one, but multiple streams of income. But most importantly, you need to have a vision. And if you have that vision, you can accomplish your goals. Well, thank you so much, Glenice. It's been a pleasure having you today.
Thanks, Ramona. I appreciate you. Thanks so much. And I want to give a shout out to my friend, Brenda Morant, for hooking us up. Thank you.
Thanks, Brenda. We appreciate you.
Bye-bye.
A special thank you to the incredible team of the Empowerment Zone. Terry Gully, theme song, NADWorks, digital support, and of course, our featured guest.
If you enjoyed my podcast, please subscribe. We are on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Be sure to rate us on Apple Podcasts too. Thank you for your continued support.